So we'll get started then. What I would say is let's just start off with a recap and let's do it from Deuteronomy 5, because that would just prompt me to say a few things that I wanted to say. Some things I said last week, you've had time to think about it, I've had time to think about it, and I'm just getting more and more convinced that I'm looking at this right. There's still a lot to discern here. You know, I've had quite an intense week in a certain area of the Word of God, and I'm still not quite free in it, liberty. I'm still feeling a little bit in the tension of this, trying to work it all out. So, you know, I don't want to be dogmatic, but I want to have a go. I want to just have a go and work this thing out. But let me say this before I even start. Philippians. Philippians makes loads more sense to me now this week. Only since last week, Philippians has just clicked a little bit more. Because you've heard this scripture loads of times. Philippians chapter 2 verse 12. You've heard this loads of times. Philippians chapter 2 verse 12, and we will be coming back to this chapter in a minute, right? Because it's one of your favourites, isn't it? The bondservant in Philippians. But this is after it. This is verse 12, after the bondservant bit, which we'll come back to in a minute. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you, both to will and to do for his good pleasure. Do all things without complaining, because we learn from Israel here, aren't we? They were always complaining, weren't they, in the wilderness? Moaning, complaining. Well, do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless children of God, without fault, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. It's one of the very first times I heard God speak to me, that when I first got saved in the first year, and I was looking at the stars, sitting on my doorstep, looking at a lovely starry night, and I heard God for the first time, I think, in my life go, that's what you're like now. You're like one of them stars. And I didn't know the word of God. And I was like, oh, I just feel like I've heard God speak. And it just explained so clearly to me, you used to be part of that darkness, but now you're like a light that shines out. And I said, God, you'll have to confirm that. Probably didn't even use that word, confirm, it's a bit religious, but I said, you'll have to, confirm that anyway. And then I went upstairs that night and read that scripture. Shine like stars in the midst of a crooked, perverse generation. That was getting me going on this journey. You really can hear the voice of God. It's always going to be in his word. Just you'll be safe if it's in his word. It will be his voice. Yeah.
The black as the night, the bright as the stars.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I went to Catherine last week. We had a absolutely dark, pitch black, but the sky was good.
Oh,
Clear sky.
Amen. And he's put the stars there as signs, hasn't he? Let's have it right. We're not like Russell Kant's astrologers or whatever, astronomy, whatever it is. But God put the stars there and named them and said them for signs. Who would want to deny that? But that's the point I'm going to, is that first bit. You've heard that before all your life. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And I've never understood what it means. He's supposed to be like one of them Quakers. We saw about the Quakers last night. He went to Quake. That must have been a deep move of God to be called the Quakers. You know what I mean? It reminds me of that Toronto blessing and everyone was shaking. It's like, that's not what God's asking for. Fear and trembling doesn't mean that. What does it mean? And after last week's portion, I started to get a sense of what this means. It means exactly what Israel went through, because they were all at the foot of Sinai and they were in fear and the mountain was trembling and it was so awesome. It says in Hebrews, and we read it last week, Hebrews 12, it said, even Moses said, I am afraid and trembling. Now that starts to make sense of what Paul's writing about now. Yous be like that. Yous be like that. Not because you've come to Mount Sinai. You've come to a deeper mountain than Mount Sinai. You've come to Mount Zion. That's what Hebrews said last week. There's no doubt about it. It said, you have not come to Mount Sinai. You have come to Mount Zion. Therefore, don't you refuse his voice like they did. Because this mountain's fearsome and awesome And it's the mountain of the living God who is speaking today. Today, he is speaking today. And we need to hear his voice today. Because Psalm 95 said, today if you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts like they did. And that's why I wanted to start off with a recap from Deuteronomy 5. Deuteronomy 5, just to re-emphasize some of the things that God said last week. Because you might not have heard, and I haven't heard, till the last couple of years myself, this way of looking at this, that what I was saying last week, this experience at Sinai last week, was a disaster. Israel refused to hear his voice and asked for a mediator called Moses. And asked, you go and hear him, Moses, and we'll sit here and you come back and tell us. We want to stand off afar. We don't want to draw near to this God. That's a disaster. And I suggested last week, and I'm feeling more comfortable with this, that Exodus chapter 20, verse 20 last week, where Moses said, don't be afraid, for God has come to test you, I said, was a bad way of looking at that. What was a better way of looking at that was God had come to do a miraculous work within you. And that's what Moses was saying, and I think this will confirm. Moses was saying, oh no, don't resist this. God wants to do a miracle in you. He wants to make you that holy nation and that kingdom of priests. And that just is not what happened. You haven't got to be a genius. You've only got to count 40 days later. They broke the covenants. They broke the covenants. This covenant got broke. It got broke. There's no two ways about it. God says it himself in the prophets. My covenant, which they broke. That's fair, isn't it? Is that fair? Yeah. All right. Deuteronomy 5. I won't read all the commandments again. We read them last week. Verse 5. But this is Deuteronomy for those just getting new to this. This is Deuteronomy. It's 40 years later. It's 40 years later. Moses is now 120. He was only a young lad at 80 at Sinai. Now it's 40 years later and he's 120. God told him he's about to die and he is now giving the covenants to the next generation, isn't it? Because the last generation all died in the wilderness apart from Joshua and Caleb. Everyone else died in the wilderness. And so before they enter the land, Moses is confirming this covenant again with them, isn't he? Yeah? So this is a recap. So he puts a few things together. Chapter 5 of Deuteronomy. Here we go. And Moshe called all Israel and said to them, Shema, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your hearing today, that you may learn them and be careful to observe them. Yahovah our Elohim made a covenant with us at Horeb. Yahovah did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, those who are here today, all of us who are alive. Yahovah talked with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between Yah and you at that time to declare to you the word of Yah. For you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up to the mountain. He said, and the first commandment was, the first word was, I am Yahovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And that's why they've done this, because the Catholic version and the Protestant version of these commands drops the bringing you out of Egypt bit. It's to disconnect us from our Hebrew faith. That's what it's replacement theology now, isn't it, with these people? So got to get all that Israel and Egypt stuff out of it. And so they tampered with it, and you can see them there. Won't go through it because thanks today for doing that. So I won't carry on. There's the commandments. I've repeated the commandments. Verse 12, the one I love to say every week, through to verse 15, about keeping the Sabbath day, and a reason why he's asked us to keep the Sabbath day. And it says in verse 15, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yahovah, your Elohim, brought you out from there by a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore, Therefore, Yah has commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. It's the day to remember that. Just one day of the week, it's the day to remember it. It doesn't mean forget it all the other days of the week, but if you do it properly, it'll keep you going throughout the week. It will really give you the biblical faith and an understanding that you are my God. Father, you are my God. You brought me out of darkness and into your light and adopted me as a son. Adopted me as a son. And that's just Sabbath language, that, because Sabbath's all about rest, isn't it? It's all about cease from your labours. And Hebrews says, whoever has ceased from his labours has entered his rest. So the Sabbath is a gospel message about salvation without works. That's what it's about. That's why it's so precious. It's so precious to God, because it's his way of communicating the gospel message of completion. The work is complete and you enter it by faith. That's why the Sabbath's so special. We're not legalistic. We're not saved because we keep these things. We keep these things because we are his covenant people, because we are his priesthood. We want to live like priests.
Amen.
Biblical priests, that is. Biblical priests. But this is the point. Verse 22, after he's given the recap of the Ten Commandments, verse 22, these words Yah spoke to your assembly. That's that word in the Hebrew, in the Greek Septuagint. That is the word ecclesia, which is translated in the New Testament to church. So if you were going to be fair throughout, you should really put church there. If you're going to translate English from Greek correctly throughout, then that is ecclesia, and it should be translated church. So that you would not have this concept that the church is a New Testament thing. There's always been an assembly of God since he brought us out of Egypt. And this is what he's saying. The kahal, the kehilah in Hebrew. These words Yah spoke to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire, the cloud and the thick darkness with a loud voice. And he added no more. That's an important phrase. He added no more, because that will make more sense when we get to Galatians chapter 3 and Paul's saying, what purpose then? The law. And we have to understand when Paul's saying that, he's being very specific and he's talking about the Levitical law that was added because of sins. Because it says here he added no more. And it says in Galatians you can't add to a covenant once it's been ratified. So what got added was something entirely different. And it wasn't this bit. He added later on another system called the Levitical priesthood. That is clear, isn't it? Yeah. And that is something you need to understand. Anyway, so he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. Verse 23, so it was when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, that you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and you said, surely Yahovah, our Elohim, has shown us his glory and his greatness. And we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that God speaks with man, and yet he still lives. Amen. Now, therefore, why should we die? What? Does that make any sense? We have seen that we can hear God now and live. Now, therefore, why should we die? It's like, what happened in that verse? Something's gone into their heads and turned them from knowing that they can hear God's voice and live, and thinking now they're going to die. Something has whispered in their ears, something that's not true. For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of Yahovah our Elohim anymore, we'll die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living God speaking from the midst of the fire as we have and lived? Who is there, Moses? Who on earth is there, Moses, who has heard the voice of God speaking with the fire and lived? Oh, I know. You did, didn't you, Moses? You told us that you heard God speaking to you from the burning bush. You can speak with God face to face and live. So, Moses, you go and talk to him then. Because we don't want to, because we've got it into our heads that this is going to kill us. That's what's going on here, isn't it? You go near and hear all that Yahovah our Elohim may say, and tell us all that Yahovah our Elohim says to you, and we will hear and do it. Then Yah heard the voice of your words when he spoke to me, and Yahovah said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people, which they have spoken to you. They are right. They're right in all that they've spoken. Moses, they're right. Verse 29. Oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me, and always keep all my commandments, that it may be well with them and with their children forever. God knows the end from the beginning. Yeah. He knows what's coming. He knows they've refused to hear his voice. He knows they've said, Moses, we don't want to hear his voice. He knows in 40 days they're going to be breaking the second commandment. When he said, don't make any false gods, don't make any statues or idols, don't make any images of gold. He knows they're going to make a golden calf in 40 days. He knows that they're standing far off. He knows he is not being able to accomplish what he wanted to do. What Moses said in Exodus 20:20, Yah wants to do a miraculous work in you. And here Yah is saying, oh, I wish they would have this heart in them. Because this is what it's about. The new covenant is a new heart. It's a new heart. It's not new laws. It's not new commands. It's not new and changed in any way other than it's transferred from tablets of stone onto our hearts of flesh. That is the new covenant. That is the new covenant. It's the new covenant. Jeremiah said this, and Hebrews confirms this. He found fault in them. No, he found fault in his Torah and went, you know what? I need to do that again. That means a mess of this. He's God. He's the same. He doesn't change. He says this in Malachi, isn't it? I am Yahovah. I do not change. Hebrews says he sure is the same yesterday, today, and forever. His name is Yahovah, who was, who is to come. He's rock solid. He's not changed. What's changed is how he does this, by the new birth and giving us a new heart of flesh and taking out the heart of stone and writing his law on our hearts and on our minds. And the on our minds bit, I believe, is from Romans 12, when Paul says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so it's as you meditate on the word of God that it goes from your heart onto your mind, and then you can say like Paul in Romans 7, I delight in the Torah of God in my inner man, and therefore, because I've got a war waging and my flesh hates the Torah and it doesn't want to do it, it wants to sin, therefore, with my mind, I will serve the Torah of God. And that's all I'm trying to get across here, is you've got to see what happens at Sinai. What happens at Sinai? They refused. They refused to hear his voice. And that within 40 days, it was self-evident, because they broke the Torah. They broke the covenant, I should say. They broke the covenant. And God at that stage said, I am going to wipe all of these out and start again with you, Moses. And that Moses interceded at that stage, didn't he? And God wanted that. You know, he wanted to bring that out of Moses. He was looking for a mediator. He was looking for someone like Yeshua. He was willing to lay his life down, because Moses said, blot me out of your book then. And God, he just wanted Moses to appeal to him as who he was, gracious and merciful. That's what he wanted, an intercessor. And then so he said, okay, but now things are going to change. Things are going to change now. And the perfect plan I had is going to change now. It's going to change from a nation of priests to a nation with a priesthood. That is different. That's different. That's different. So where I hope no one was confused last week, but I think there might have been a couple of people not quite happy or settled with this. But what it said, what we read last week, and this is where I'm coming from now. We read in Galatians chapter 4 last week when Paul said in verse 21, "Come on you that want to be under the law. Don't you know what the Torah is trying to teach you?" That's what Paul said. Galatians is all about, isn't it? Addressing the gang of people that want to be under the law. And we're not under the law. We're not under the law. Paul says that. And Paul says, come on, you that want to be under the law. Don't you know what the Torah, don't you know what the law actually teaches? Because to be under the law doesn't matter what you've heard or what book you've read or what YouTube you've watched. If you want to understand what under the law is, there's only one person you need to inquire, and it's Paul. Because he's explained it himself. He's going to use the phrase, let him explain it, not some other fella. Let Paul explain it, because he explains it in Romans 9 into 10. He explains perfectly what under the law is. Under the law is people seeking to be made righteous by observing the works of the law. That's what under the law is. By Paul's definition, who cares what anyone else thinks it is? Really? Who cares what I think it is? I just care what the Bible says it is. And it's very clear that under the law is a self-righteous system of works-based, and that's what Paul says. Israel resisted the grace of God. They didn't understand that righteousness came from grace. They stumbled at the stumbling block. They didn't understand that the Messiah is the one who would give us the grace. They didn't get that. They didn't understand the Messiah and the work of redemption and the work. The gospel is the righteousness of God revealed, isn't it? And the righteousness of God is imputed to us through faith in him. And that's simple. That's not even hard. But what I'm trying to say is that is the opposite of under the law. Under the law is trying to attain righteousness by your own efforts. That's fair, isn't it? Well, what he was saying in that was, come on, if you want to understand this, you need to understand this, that there are in fact two covenants. That's what Paul said. And I've got a sort of, someone had a little bit of a comment on one here, that I was coming out with dual covenant theology. It's like, I am not coming out with dual covenant theology if we understand what dual covenant theology is. And I hate all these man-made terms. It's like they throw man-made terms. You've got to argue about man-made terms, and you find out we're having a pointless argument here. Because it's just an argument about what some fella give a label to. I'm not interested. Dual covenant theology, for the point of saying it, is that there's one covenant for Israel and another covenant for Gentiles. That's a load of nonsense. Because the Torah says there's one Torah for Israel and the stranger, not one for the Lord for the Israel and one for the stranger. There's one for all of you. So there's no such thing as dual covenant theology in that God's dealing with people in different ways. But you have got to be totally ignoring the Bible to say that there is not two covenants, because Paul says there's two covenants. So I'm quite comfortable to say there's two covenants, because Paul says it. He says it. So all we need to do is understand what's he on about. What's he on about? Well, what's he on about is a lot clearer when you understand that there is in fact two priesthoods. Two priesthoods helps you to understand this a lot better. And we are quite comfortable here, what you read out before, Yvonne, Psalm 110, that the priesthood we belong to is called Melchizedek, because Yeshua is a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. And the Levitical priesthood is over, or the administration of the Levitical priesthood is over. Levites, clearly in the millennium, will be allowed to be priests, but it will not be a Levitical priesthood, because Yeshua is a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. And that's an entirely different priesthood, different. So let's just examine that a bit more. We haven't even started, but there's a lot to get through tonight, and I want to really establish this, because you've got no chance of understanding covenant without understanding this. So let's go to Hebrews chapter 7, if that's all right. I'm very tempted one of these days to just do Hebrews, but we're going to spend time in it tonight. I'm not going to be in any rush tonight. There's 53 commandments tonight. We've got no chance of getting through them. Donkeys and oxes and, you know, teeth falling out and eyes getting plucked out and all kinds. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand. All that tonight. And we haven't got a chance of going into all of that. So I want to focus on this, if that's okay with you. And let's see where it goes. But I'm in no rush. I hope you're all right with that. We're going to finish on time tonight because we've got no chance of completing the portion. So before we even start, I've got to get this bit out. Is that all right? Yeah. Sorry, chapter 7. Chapter 7. Just to make a couple of things clear. Just to make a few things clear. Chapter 7. Chapter 7, verse 11. Therefore, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it people received the law. Well, that's not true, is it? Or is it? Well, it must be, because it says it. But what I'm trying to say to you tonight, what we read tonight, there's no Levitical priesthood tonight, is there? Unless I've missed something, there isn't a Levitical priesthood on Mount Sinai tonight, when the Book of the Covenant gets ratified. There is no Levitical priesthood, is it? The Levitical priesthood don't get started till after the sin of the golden calf. So you can now understand in this instance what the writer is talking about when he's talking about law. He's not talking about the Torah from Genesis 1:1. He's talking about a specific part of the Torah, and it's the Levitical priesthood bit. That's clear, isn't it? For people received the law under the Levitical priesthood. That's clear, isn't it? Abraham didn't know who the Levitical priesthood was. He didn't have a clue. If you'd have tried to talk to Abraham about the Levitical priesthood, he'd go, well, I know the Melchizedek fella. I know he's a priest. He's the bread and wine chap. Who's Levi? Sorry, that's your great-grandson, Abraham. Oh, yeah. Abraham wasn't under the Levitical priesthood. If the Levitical priesthood could bring about perfection, what further need was there? That another priest should arise according to the order of Melchizedek and not be called according to the order of Aaron? Great question. If the Levitical priesthood was the be-all and end-all, what's the point? What's the point? What's the point in Yeshua time? If the Levitical priest is the be-all and end-all, and if you can just get a few sheep and bulls killed, what's the point? Because that couldn't bring about perfection. That couldn't do it. That couldn't give you a new heart. That couldn't make you born again. And that's what you've got to spend a bit of time. Hebrews is saying the same thing over and over again. But you can't ignore this next verse. Verse 12. For the priesthood being changed, which it clearly has been, it's not a Levitical priesthood anymore. The priesthood being changed of necessity. Of necessity. There is also a change of the law. That's what it says. That's what it says. But the good news is, it's not a change of the law to no law. It's not like the law's done away with. No, the Levitical aspects are done away with. Let's just go over the page. To verse 8, chapter 8. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. And this is worth reading. This is what you were saying before, Yvonne. I'll just read it within no rush. I would try to spend a bit more time in the New Testament explaining what this is about. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, sounds. Chapter 8. Look, this is what it says. Chapter 8, verse 7. Verse 7. Verse 6. Verse 6. Now the Yeshua the Messiah has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also a mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been found for a second. Does that make sense of what Paul's saying? There are two covenants. Well, that's clear. I'm not saying Paul wrote Hebrews. Some people say he did. Some people say he didn't. I don't know. He didn't sign it. But I know who definitely wrote it. The Holy Spirit inspired him. So whoever wrote it, they're coming from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
But Paul said there's two covenants. And this fella, whoever's writing this, seems to agree. If the first covenant had been faultless, there'd have been no place sought for a second. Second means two. So he's on board in here. Two covenants. Because finding fault, not with himself, and going, oh, silly me, what a stupid covenant I gave them there. No, finding fault with them. Finding fault with them. He says, behold, the days are coming, says Yah, when I will make a new covenant. A new covenant with the house of Judah, Israel, and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt. Because they did not continue in my covenants, and I disregarded them, says Yah. This is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yah. I will put my Torah in their minds and write them on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people.
What a day that will be.
I know. None of them shall teach his brother, his neighbour, and his brother, saying, know Yahovah. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest of them, shall know me. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their lawless deeds I will remember no more. I mean, amen. This is what we believe in, isn't it?
Amen.
But look at this, verse 13. In that he says a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete. Now, what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. He's talking here. It's a priesthood situation he's talking about, isn't it? It's a priesthood and an administration of that priesthood. The Levitical priesthood was just getting them through. They broke the covenants, and rather than being wiped out, he gave them a system where they could get by and make sacrifices for sin and come once a year in the holy place, the high priest to come in and atone for Israel, and that'll keep you going, and that'll keep you going. And that's exactly what Paul's on about in Galatians when he says the law, the book of the law, this covenant that's now become obsolete, was added because of transgressions to bring us to the Messiah. And then we'd have the Messiah, and then the Messiah will be able to say, it is finished. That is now. I've done it now. Once for all, I will enter the holy place now. And I doesn't have to do any more suffering, any more blood to be shed by him. It's done once for all. That's enough. It's enough. That makes sense, doesn't it? It's a priesthood. It's the best way to analyse this. Because there is a discussion going on. Is the book of the covenants and the book of the law the same thing? And the arguments for and against are great. And I've took the time, and we'll discuss it with anyone, because I've took the time to read it. And I will discuss it. But I've come away going, it's not the best way to approach this. The best way to approach this is from the Bible. Where the Bible clearly is saying there are two covenants. And we're clearly seeing that there are two priesthoods that go with those two covenants. The Levitical, it's bye-bye Levitical covenants. Bye-bye. Don't worry, Levites. You're still people, and you can still work for God. You can still be priests. But it's not your priesthood no more. It's Yeshua's priesthood. Because he's the high priest now. And like we said last night, even those Gentiles that are grafted into this covenant, they can be priests as well. It's not exclusive to you Levites anymore. And that is a reversal back to exactly how God originally intended this when he brought us out of Egypt. He says in Numbers 3, when I brought you out of Egypt, I wanted all of the firstborn to be the priests. But now, because of the sin of the golden calf, it's changing. That's clear, isn't it? I think it is. Right, let's start then.
Can you just share verse 10 where it says, in verse 10 where it says, after those days?
Yeah, go on.
You're saying that refers to after.
That's a good point, yeah.
After the tribulation, you put in Israel's heart. So it's
Okay.
still ongoing.
Yeah, well, we read that in Romans this week that, you know, partial blindness has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so, as you're starting to see Israel coming into the truth now, with lots of rabbis getting saved, and you've got to also realise the time of the Gentiles is coming to an end. You know, the time of this age is coming to an end now. You know, wars on the horizon. Don't get carried away with them Olympics and all that. I don't know if you're going to see the opening ceremony. They've got two lovely doves and they're all singing, imagine there's no heaven. It's an abomination. It's an abomination. There is a heaven and there is an earth. We're here, aren't we? You know. Amen. So chapter 21 is where we're up to, but we're not going to read all of this. We haven't got a chance of getting through all of this, so we'll skip through it. But the first part, we're not going to skip through this first part. Some of you that were here last year will remember this first part. It's amazing. It's all about Yeshua, all this. Chapter 21 of Exodus, and the portion is called Mishpatim. The portion is called Mishpatim, Mishpatim, because it's called judgments, Mishpatim, and you know, within that word Mishpatim, you've got the word Shaphat, and that's the word for judge. When you read the book of Judges, you read in the book of Shoftim, so judge, Shaphat, these are the judgments, the Mishpatim, and basically, in a nutshell, this is the rules of the kingdom. This is the rules of their kingdom. This is how the king will reign. He will judge in this way. And they're lovely, you know, they make loads of sense. There's Justin. Shabbat shalom, brother.
Hello, Justin.
Some bread and wine there for you, mate. Do you want to see the blessing again? Oh, nice to see you, brother. Well, look, we're just getting going, really, but we're going to finish on time, don't worry. But we've been spending a bit of time going through the two covenants situation, you know, what Paul said, two covenants, Sinai and Zion, so all that. We're just about to start. And, you know, just saying that these are the Mishpatim, these are the judgments, this is how the Messiah is, this is who he is, and the lovely and fair. You know, we'll get into some of them. But like, I know you were in hysterics a couple of years ago when we were going through the claims. If you got an ox, and you know, someone kills your ox, it's like you get fair recompense for an ox, but don't be coming in here with all of that. Oh, but my ox, you haven't seen an ox like it in all your life. My ox was worth 5 oxes, and the word's saying, we're not going there. You know, all of these claim culture, you know, where there's a fall, call Paul rude, or whatever, you know, all of those claim culture. He's like, we're not having that in this kingdom. Right? I'll set the rules here. And these rulings were handed over to judges, and judges would judge. But this is the guidelines for the judges. That's all he's given, isn't it? The kingdom guidelines for how to judge. You know, it's an eye for an eye, not an eye for a tooth. If someone's knocked your tooth out, don't be coming in with an eye claim. You know, you get less for the tooth and more for the eye. So don't be giving it eye for tooth. It's eye for eye. And tooth for tooth, and hand for hand. It doesn't mean pluck people's eyes out, you know, because someone's knocked your eye out. Don't be plucking their eye out. But I want the eye compo. You know what I'm saying? That's all he's saying. It's fairness. It's an equitable system. It's how he will judge, how he will reign, and how he will set up his kingdom. And so these are lovely commandments.
It's like a righteous compensation.
Righteous, yes. And that's one of the Psalms says, that his throne is established on righteousness and judgment and justice. This is how he reigns. But the first bit's great, it's the bond servant bit, and so we're not in any rush. If this is all we do, we'll definitely do this, and we'll definitely do the last chapter tonight. But this first bit is going to take a bit to go through, because it's so powerful. It's about Yeshua. All of it's about Yeshua, as you will see now. Chapter 21, verse 1. Now these are the Mishpatim, the judgments which you shall set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years. And on the 7th year, he shall go out free and pay nothing. So you're already getting that Sabbath concept, aren't you? 6 days you shall work, the 7th day you shall rest. If you're a Hebrew servant, 6 years you shall work, the 7th year you'll go free. And we'll see that a bit later on the Sabbath year, isn't it? God said, in the land, when you're in the land, 6 years you can work the land, but the 7th year, you've got to let it rest. Because I'm God, and I made the earth, and I want the earth to have a rest. And it's going to work on my principles of 6 years and a year rest. And we see in the history of Israel, this is just wonderful history and fact, that Israel spent 490 years in the land, I think the first time, without keeping the Sabbath year. And so it caught up with them. God's not mocked, and it caught up with them, and they went into Babylon for exactly 70 years. Because if you divide 490 by 7, you get 70. And they'd missed the Sabbath, the Shemitah year, for 70 years, 70 times. So they got a 70-year penalty in Babylon. That's how God, he means it when he says it. So that's just that principle. So verse 3, if he comes in by himself, he'll go out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. But different scenario now. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be the master's, you see, and he shall go out on his own, by himself. But if the servant plainly says, hang on a minute, I love my master, and I love my wife, and I love my children, I won't go out free. I want to stay here, and I love it here. Because this is not like slavery, like, what we're used to with whips and chains. And this is not that at all, This is people that are in a bad state of affairs. For whatever reason, they've become a servant. Because they've had whatever has happened, they can't look after themselves. But it's better than they becoming a criminal or becoming a prostitute and selling their bodies. Better that is that you come to a lovely family that's doing well for themselves and obviously been keeping a Torah, God's blessing them. Now you can become a part of that family. This is God's way, not a servant, slave concept. It's a grafting in to the family concept. Do you want to become part of our family? And then this fella's gone, you know what? It's sound here. I don't want to go back into the world on my own. I'll be back on the air in a minute. I'll be back selling a big issue, or I'll be back selling my body downtown. I don't want to go back out there. I want to stay part of this fantastic family, and I want to stay with my wife and kids. It's a fair thing, isn't it? This is the system. It's not slavery. This is adoption, grafting in. So this is what happens in that scenario. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. We said that start with Shoftim, because the judges applied the Torah. That's what Yeshua was saying. Don't judge others. You've got a system of judgment here. You've got a Torah kingdom, and there's people in place. They should judge. They should, we shouldn't be having to go to these courts of law and suing each other. No, we've got a kingdom way of doing this. I wish I'd have realised that a few years ago. Although finding a judge would have been another matter. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. He shall also bring him to the door and to the doorposts. And his master shall pierce his ear. And he shall serve him forever. So we've got to bring this character to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear to that doorpost. And straight away, we're all thinking, well, we were at the doorpost a few weeks ago. What were we doing? We were putting the blood of the lamb on our doorposts a few weeks ago. And that got us out of Egypt. The angel passed over, the angel of death passed over us. And we escaped death because we sacrificed the lamb and put its blood on doorposts. And now our ears are getting nailed to that doorpost. You can see the imagery, can't you? Well, you'll see it even more now. Psalm 40, I'm going to read all of this. I'm not going to skip through any of this tonight. Just go to Psalm 40, and those of you who remember from last year will already be going to Hebrews 10. Psalm 40 and Hebrews 10. Psalm 40 and Hebrews 10. I'm not going to read it all. And we'll really get this bond-saving bit. Because we don't want to get too much. You can only get so much done in one night. Can't go through all of these commandments tonight. So I'm going to focus on this one for a bit. And it's Psalm 40. I'm going to read it all. And then we're going to read Hebrews 10. I'm going to read it all. But just have a quick look at Psalm 40, verse 6, and Hebrews 5, while I'm reading it, and just see if you can spot the difference. Because that's what God said, and Yeshua said, you've got to enter like children. You've got to be like children to enter. So we're going to play a little game called Spot the Difference. And see if you can spot the difference between Hebrews 40, verse 6, and Psalm 40, verse 6, and Hebrews chapter 10, verse 5. And I'll give you a chance to shout out at the end. Psalm 40, I waited patiently for Yahovah, and he inclined to me. And he heard my cry. He also brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my steps. He has put a new song in my mouth, praise to our God. Many will see it and fear, and will trust in Yahovah. We read that last week, didn't we, in Psalm 125. Those who trust in Yahovah are like Mount Zion, which shall not be moved. Blessed is the man who makes his trust in Yahovah, and does not respect the proud, nor such as tear aside to lies. Many, O Yahovah, my God, are your wonderful works which you have done, and your thoughts towards us cannot be numbered to you in order, recounted to you in order. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. That's beautiful. That's how much intimacy and how many his thoughts are towards us, how much he thinks about us. We're his children. He loves us so much. Verse 6, this is the point. Sacrifice, an offering you did not desire. My ear you have opened. See why we're going here? If you want to be this bond servant, you have to have your ear pierced to the door. My ear you have opened. Burnt offering and sin offering you did not require. Then I said, behold, I come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. I delight to do your will, O God, and your Torah is written in my heart. I have proclaimed the gospel, the good news of righteousness in the great assembly. Indeed, I do not restrain my lips. So, Yahovah, you yourself know I have not hidden your righteousness within my heart. I have declared your faithfulness and your salvation, Yeshua. I have not concealed your loving kindness and your truth from the great assembly. Do not withhold your tender mercies from me, O Yah. Let your loving kindness and your truth continually preserve me. For innumerable evils have surrounded me. My iniquities have overtaken me, so that I'm not able to look up. They are more than the hairs of my head. Therefore my heart fails me. Be pleased, O Yahovah, to deliver me. O Yahovah, make haste to help me. Let them be ashamed and brought to mutual confusion who seek to destroy my life. Let them be driven backwards and brought to dishonour who wish me evil. Let them be confounded because of their shame who say to me, aha, aha. Let all those who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. Let such as love your salvation say continually, Yahovah be magnified. For I am poor and needy, yet Yahovah thinks upon me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God. That's a powerful psalm, and that's about Yeshua. He's the bond servant. That's why, let me just read that what I said before. Ray's favourite from Philippians 2. Just so you understand, this is all about Yeshua. He's the bond servant. We're bond servants as well. Paul said he was a bond servant. Peter said he was a bond servant. James, the brother of Yeshua, Yaakov, said he was a bond servant. We're called to be this bond servant. But here's our perfect example of the bond servant. Chapter 2 of Philippians, verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah Yeshua, who being in the form of God, because he is God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, and coming in the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, God has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Yeshua, every knee shall bow, on those in heaven and those on earth and those under the earth, and every tongue shall confess that Yeshua the Messiah is Jehovah, to the glory of God the Father. And then we read the other bit. For this reason, work out your own salvation with that same fear and trembling that they had at Sinai, because you shall come to Zion. And it's the same voice speaking. It's the same God. It's the same God who is a consuming fire that we read about at the end. So now, Hebrews 10. That was just to clarify that Yeshua is the bondservant. It said that, didn't it? Yeshua is the bondservant. What did the bondservant have to do? Have his ear pierced. What did Psalm 40 say? Sacrifice and offering you did not desire. My ears you have opened. Well, it doesn't say that in Hebrews 10. It's been changed in Hebrews 10. But let's just read Hebrews 10, verse 1 first. We've already mentioned in Hebrews 7, the writer of Hebrews clarified, didn't he, quite clearly what he means by law in this concept, in this context, I should say. What did the writer of Hebrews mean by the law in the context of this lesson, this teaching? He was talking about the Levitical priesthood, wasn't he? He said that, didn't he? The Levitical priesthood, that couldn't bring perfection, because under it, they received the law. So when we say law, we know he's talking Levitical. Chapter 10, for the law, having a shadow of the good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with these same sacrifices which they offer continually, year by year, make those who approach perfect. For then would they not have ceased to be offered. For the worshippers, once purified, will have had no more conscience of sin. But in those sacrifices, there's a reminder of sins every year. It's to get on your case and remind you, you're sinners, you need to keep doing this, It's meant to make you point to the Messiah and go, oh, we need a Messiah to come. That was the point. The law was our schoolmaster to bring us to the Messiah. Because this law, this sacrificial system, reminds you of sin. It doesn't take away. It reminds you of sin. Verse 4, because it's not possible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sin. It's not possible. The blood of bulls and goats cannot take away sin. We need something far better than the blood of bulls and goats. To cleanse our souls, we need something better than the blood of bulls and goats. This covenant is weaker and could not perfect those who draw near. It couldn't do it. Therefore, because of the weakness of that covenant, because of the inability of that covenant to transform us and to make us new creations and to write it on our hearts, therefore, when he came into the world, the Messiah, Hebrews 10 verse 5, he said, this is what the Messiah said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire. But he doesn't say, my ear you've opened. He says, now, a body you have prepared for me. Whenever you see a change from the Tanakh and its difference in the New Testament, you've got to examine that. You've got to examine it. It doesn't even sound similar. My ear you've opened and a body you prepared for me. Well, now you can start to understand that if this ear and this body are synonymous, and this ear had to be pierced and opened, then surely this body is going to have to be pierced and opened. And that's exactly what happened with this body that God prepared for the Messiah. He was pierced for our transgressions. The prophecy said, not a bone of his body will be broken. That was the ordinances for the Passover lamb, wasn't it? The Passover lamb could not have a bone broken. And so Yeshua, who is our Passover, who is the Lamb of God, could not have a bone of his body broken. And so to ensure that that didn't happen, what did they do when they were about to break his legs? And they broke the legs of the man on his left and the man on the right. When they come to Yeshua, they didn't break his bones. They, instead, a Roman centurion or a Roman soldier, pierced him. My ear you have pierced. A body you have prepared for me. You don't desire the blood of bulls and goats. It needed to be the Messiah that was to be pierced for us. And he was pierced for us. And what happened? Blood and water flowed out. And that constitutes the water of purification. That is what cleanses our conscience from sin. The blood of bulls and goats couldn't do that. It couldn't purify us from sin. It just provided a system where God could keep going with us, wasn't it? Passing over, all in light of the Messiah's coming. King David understood these things. Abraham understood these things. Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day, and he was glad. King David saw this, because King David wrote about Melchizedek. Sit at my right hand. King David saw a different priesthood coming, a royal priesthood coming. King David wrote things like this. Not that I don't think he did write Psalm 40. But I'm going to carry on reading Hebrews 10 because I can tell you're all loving it. Maybe not. No, you're I can tell you are. You always say later, and I'm like that. Why do you say something? Why do you say amen then? Verse 6, I'm only messing. I'm getting over my insecurity. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin, you had no pleasure. You had no pleasure in that. He wasn't delighted in that. Then I said, we've read this Psalm 40, this is what Messiah said though. Then I said, behold, I have come. In the volume of the book it is written of me to do your will, O God. Now you can understand in Gethsemane when Yeshua knows his hour's come. He knows his hour's come. And he says, doesn't he then, God, if this hour can pass, if this cup can pass, please, but nevertheless, I haven't come here to do my will. I know what Psalm 40 says, and I know what's written about me, and I know it says, I have come to do your will, oh God. So, gathering all, taking strength from this, Yeshua said, not my will, Father, not my will, but your will be done. That's all because of this. Verse 8 previously saying, sacrifice, offering, burnt offering and offerings for sin you did not desire, nor had pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law. The law, you can start, I hope you can start to see, you can write in Levitical in that bit. Yeah. It's Levitical, isn't it? Levitical law. You can do that, can't you? Only if you understand it, you can do that. Otherwise, don't take my word for it. Please, don't take my word for it. Do due diligence. Ask him to reveal the truth. I think it's getting a bit clearer to me. But as I said at the start, I've still got to wrestle with a few issues here. Verse 9, then he said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God. He takes away the first. What does that say? He takes away the first. Takes away the first, that he may establish the second. Please don't accuse me of being into dual covenant theology if we're talking about the same thing. But please don't deny that there are clearly two covenants in the Word of God. That's clear, isn't it? He takes away the first, that he may establish the second. I'm not a genius, but I know 1 and 1 is 2. I know second means 2. I just do. You know, I don't know how, but you get this by meditation. You've got to spend hours on this. So work that out, took me years. But look at this verse 10. By that will, what will? His will. I haven't come to do my will. I've come to do your will. In the volume of the book, it's written of me to do your will. By that will, verse 10, we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Yeshua the Messiah once for all.
Amen.
And every priest stands ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But this man, Yeshua, when after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, that's clear, isn't it? One sacrifice for sins forever. What did he do? He sat down at the right hand of God. And where on earth does the writer of Hebrews get that information from? From the Psalm Yvonne read out at the start. Psalm 110. If you want to understand Melchizedek, you've got Genesis 14 and Psalm 110. And that's it in the Tanakh. They're the only two scriptures you've got to go with in the Tanakh. Hebrews had so much understanding to what this is all about. Hebrews keeps on quoting Psalm 110, Psalm 110. He sat down at the right hand of God. And I listened to, there's a few Melchizedek preachers, and I'm not being funny, but I don't think any of them have ever explained it. It all gets into technical jargon, and you get a bit, it's like, oh, I get a bit confused with it all. It's so simple. The message of this is so simple, you know. It's called seated at the right hand of God. And that's us. Yeshua is seated at the right hand of God. But what does Ephesians say? What does Ephesians chapter 2 say? We are seated in him. So the Melchizedek priesthood is a priesthood that is seated in him. At rest, knowing the work's done, going, hallelujah, the work's done, and I'm not going to do anything at all to try and earn this. And when you've learned that, and when you are established in that, which is really grace, then you'll be ready to do some work for him, because you love him, and because you know that Ephesians doesn't stop with, we're not saved by works, we're saved by grace. It carries on. And Donald Trump quoted it yesterday at the prayer breakfast. He quoted it, didn't he? At the prayer breakfast, and he said, we are created unto good works. He is prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So this gospel is all about salvation by grace through faith and not by works. But it is all about doing works because he has prepared works for us to do. Once you're saved, once you're established, then you can be trusted to go and do the works. Otherwise, you get all proud and think, see the works I can do? I'm great at work. That's not the way. The way is be seated. Sit. Be seated. Rest. It's finished. It's over. It's done. I pay for you. I love you. There's nothing you can do to earn it. It's a free gift. It's a gift. It's free. That's the gospel. That's the message of Melchizedek. The Levitical priests didn't have chairs. They didn't have chairs. God didn't say, we'll do the temple in the next few weeks. He didn't say, I'll make a few chairs for yourselves, lads, when you have your dinner. All sit down and have a little chat around the table. He didn't give them no chairs. We've got a chair. It's called the mercy seat. And that's where Yeshua is seated at the right hand of God, and where we are seated in him. That's our identity. That's what this priesthood's about. That's why I love the Melchizedek message so much. Because it's simple. It's simple. It's the most quoted or referred to verse in the New Testament is this position of seated. It is, yeah, it is. And that's what Hebrews is saying there. This man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God. From that time, waiting till his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering, he has perfected forever those who are being sanctified. You know, for one offering, he's perfected forever those who are being sanctified. But the Holy Spirit also witnesses to us, for after he said before, this is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, says, yeah, I'll put my Torah in their hearts and in their minds, I will write them. Then he adds, their sins and their lawless deeds I will remember no more. Now where there is remission of these, there is no longer an offering for sin. Therefore, brethren, having boldness now, because of all that, to enter the holiest, the holiest, You know, where the priest, the high priest, could only go once a year, would use, come Ed, enter here, boldly now. Why? Because he's not a priesthood. Not like that Levitical priesthood, where only the high priest could enter once a year. No, you can all come. Come on, come in. That's what he's saying, isn't it? With boldness, enter by the blood of Yeshua, by a new and living way which he has consecrated for us through the veil, that is his flesh. And having a high priest over the house of God, let us not be like them. They stood afar off, didn't they? Remember, they were at Sinai, and that phrase, they stood afar off. Well, this is the opposite. This one's called draw near, just like Moses did. Draw near with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with that pure water that Ephesians 5 says, that he died that he may sanctify his bride with the washing of the water of the word. That's clear, isn't it? I'll just finish off these last few verses. Verse 23, let us hold fast the confession of our hope. Let us do that. Hold fast the confession. That means you've got to get it out of your mouth. Of our hope without wavering. For he who promises faithful. And let's consider, let's do that. Let's consider each other. Let's consider each other in order to stir up love and good works. Don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, sadly, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. God, you know, people have been getting excited for 2,000 years over this, not like we should be. We are that generation. We really are that generation. We should be really getting this now and going, wow, God, whatever has happened before us, that's none of our business here. This is our time. This is our time now. We're going to stand before him. Face to face, we are going to see him. And we will have to give an account. We will have to give an account, and we will face a trial by fire. We will. Our works will be tested by fire. And those works that are of him will burn up. And those that are of him will last.
Amen.
And will be rewards in the kingdom. And that's what we want in it. We want to be good and faithful servants. And we want him to say that to us. Well, you've got to do it his way. You can't make up your own way. All right, well, we're doing all right, you know. There's only 10, 15 minutes to go. I'm not even going to attempt to try and get into the rest of this. Let's go to chapter 24. Let's just finish off the evening. Sorry, let's go to chapter 23. Well, let's just go quickly to chapter 23, because I've skipped through all them other things there. You know, there's some good stuff in there. Some great stuff in there, but it's the laws. I said it's compensation. It's not taking vengeance. It's bringing a matter to an end. I've mentioned some of these things in the previous weeks. Chapter 22, if there's a dispute going on, chapter 22, verse 11, if there's a dispute going on over these donkeys and oxes, then let them take an oath. Then an oath of Yahuwah shall be between them both, that he has not put his hand into his neighbour's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that, and he shall not make it good. In other words, rather than having feuds going on, and revenge systems going on, bring it to Yah, and let oaths be taken. And if oaths are taken, that's the end of the matter. It's just how God's how he wants his kingdom to operate. So there's so many good little principles, not that I'm relegating them to principles, I hope you know what I mean. So many good kingdom ways. You know, like it's all about oxes, and if your ox gores someone, if these have had American pit bull terriers, he'd have said that as well. But they didn't come out of Egypt with American pit bull terriers and Rottweilers foaming at the mouth. So it applies, you know what I mean? It applies if you've got a high-powered sports car. Don't have a drink and start driving dead fast and you knock someone over. There'll be price to pay. It's just a fair system so that there's not murder going on and people harbouring grudges. It's meant to just bring conclusion to these things because he knows we're dust. He knows that we fall short. So he's bringing a conclusion to matters. Just a fair way of how the kingdom will run.
I just thought, you know, on one point on one of these verses, it says, bits or whatever, but
Yeah.
You bought like 30 pieces of silver.
Oh yeah, I like that
I
too.
just like that because that must be the equivalent to a life. Because that's what
Yeah.
Jesus got after handing over.
Yeah, so
30 pieces of
that's
silver.
chapter 21, verse 32. If the ox gores a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. And that's like the transactional, isn't it, of what happened with Yeshua. They gave over 30 pieces of silver to Judas, who must have been carrying on like he was the master. And they gave him 30 pieces of silver.
Compensation for a life.
Yeah, for a male servant. A male servant. So Yeshua, even the price he was sold for was the servant price. Nice point. Just nice point too. So that just reinforces this taught us all about Yeshua, and he was sold for 30 pieces of silver, like some male servants, which he was a male servant. He came as a bond servant. We read that. So yeah, just skipping through it there. We've already mentioned chapter 23, verse 10 is the Lord of the Sabbaths. We've already touched on that, because that's going into the yearly Sabbath, the 7th year. The land must lay rest. We touched on that. You derive the Jubilee from that. Then in verse 14, it gives you this: three times you shall keep a feast to me in the year. And that's the word Hagag, C-H-A-G-H-A-G, Hagag. And you've probably heard the name of one of the prophets called Haggai. Haggai means festive one. We said that last week. You've come to Mount Zion, to the festive assembly. We've come to we're meant to be a festive people who keep the feasts. And this is what my Bible says to explain Haggai: to celebrate, to keep a feast, to be festive, to dance, to assemble for rejoicing and celebration. This verb occurs 15 times. It's translated as dancing and keep a pilgrim feast. An important derivative of is called Hag feast, especially referring to the 7 feasts God gave to Israel. The name Haggai comes from Hagag, meaning festive one or celebrating one. So this is what he's given us. It's not miserable, God. He's saying 3 times in a year, I want you to have a boss time. I want you to have a really great time. 3 times in a year, and every week and all that. But there's 3 times a year I want you to assemble and to come to Jerusalem, as it will turn out to be, and meet with me face to face. Face-to-face meetings. I want to meet with you. I want to reveal things to you. And these feasts are all the feasts of Yahovah, and Yeshua has or will fulfill these feasts. The first spring feasts are all to do with his death, his burial, and his resurrection. But the end feasts, the 7th month feasts, are all to do with him coming back. And the sound of shofar, trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. But it doesn't call it that here. It says in verse 15, you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days, as I commanded you, at the time appointed in the month of the Aviv. Remember that Aviv, don't we? That was the term for the barley. It was Aviv, right? For in that month, that's the month you came out of Egypt. None of you shall appear empty. Now, this next feast is what we would normally call Shavuot, weeks, Pentecost. But in the first mention, it's called the Feast of Harvest. The first fruits of your labours which you have sown in the field. And then the final feast is not called Tabernacles or Sukkot. Here it's called the Feast of Ingathering. And there's so much more end time meaning to them feasts, isn't it? It's like all to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the Feast of Harvest and the Feast of the Ingathering. It reminds me of Yeshua when he's explaining the parables of the wheat and the tares, and he's saying that the wheat is the harvest. The harvest is the end of the age, I should say. And at the end of the age, the reapers are going to come out, and they're going to reap, and they're going to gather in my harvest. It's all about this. That's why he's called these feasts these names, because they're meant to make us realise he is going to fulfil his calendar. And he's given us them to us to learn from. And we've read this in the past, I won't do it now, but Colossians chapter 2 is very clear, very, very, very clear, when it says, do not let anyone judge you regarding food and drink, and regarding Sabbaths, and new moons and feasts. Don't let anyone judge you about that and say that you're legalistic or you've gone off your head and you're into all that Jewish stuff. Don't let anyone say that to you. Don't let them say that to you. Why? Because these are a shadow of things to come. If it said they were a shadow of things that happened, I could sort of understand where people are coming from. But when it doesn't say that, and it says they are a shadow of things to come, and Paul's writing after the resurrection of the Messiah, then I think we ought to take that seriously and realise that these are a shadow of things to come. And of course the devil doesn't want us to understand that. Of course the devil doesn't want us blowing shofars. Of course the devil's going to get people to come and say, oh, you're all legalistic now. The devil's going to try, because he's terrified of a people who are his holy nation, doing it his way. Because it just reminds him what the prophet said, that in the last days, the Torah is going to go forth from Zion. And you're going to get a load of Gentiles coming and going, oh, we even had it lies, haven't we? But this is great coming back to the truth, isn't it? It's beautiful coming back to the truth. God forbid that this ever get complicated or legalistic. And I mean it. Please, God forbid that would ever happen here. And let us understand the joy, the hag of these feasts, the festival occasions that these are, the joy we're meant to have in these things. Don't let any pagan or misinformed believer tell you this is done away with. How can it be? How can it be when Zechariah says, concerning the time we're not even in yet, the millennium, that all the people have to go up to Jerusalem every year to keep the Feast of Tabernacles and to worship the King? It's great to get the chance to practice this, isn't it? And be dead good when we get there. And everyone go, oh, you're good, aren't you? In a humble way. Let's just rattle through chapter 24, because it's so dramatic and it speaks for itself. But it's great as well. It's beautiful. Chapter 24. So everything that's been said last week, especially the last 20 minutes of last week, and this week, all should make sense. Or you need to at least have these scriptures in your head to be able to approach this. Chapter 24. Now he said to Moshe, come up to Yahovah, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, that's Aaron's lads, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. Because God knows what's going on. He knows where the hearts are at. He's already heard what they've said. So we're moving on, but God knows this people, the hearts are far from me. They don't want to hear my voice. So we're going to quickly transition through now. Here's 2, and Moshe alone shall come near Yah, and they shall not come near, nor shall the people go up with him. So Moshe came and told the people all the words of Yahovah, and all the Mishpatim, the judgments that he's just given us. And all the people answered with one voice, Kol Echad, that is, Echad, one, Kol Echad, one voice, and said, oh, the words which Yahovah has said, we will do. Which is a bit presumptuous, because we know there's a system here. You have to hear first, hear and understand, then guard them. It's like a 3-stage process we see, don't we, that develops Shema, Shomeh, and Asa. Well, they're just saying, we'll Asa, we'll do. Moshe wrote. You've got to see this, because if you're just watching the 10 Commandments with Charles Leston, all you get is these 2 tablets. No, Moshe actually wrote, it says here. He wrote all the words of the Yah, and he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel, which are still there. When you watch them videos, they're still there. And then he sent young men of the children of Israel, who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings. There's no mention of sin offerings. And when we get into Leviticus, you'll see there's like 5 various offerings, isn't it? There's the burnt offering, which is really the Olah Korban, which means a whole ascending offering. And then you got the meal offering, and then you get the peace offering, then you get the sin and the trespass offering. There's 5 kinds of offering. Well, they just offered 2 of them. They offered 2, the burnt offering and the peace offering, which are both in Leviticus described as what? A sweet aroma. A sweet aroma. And Yeshua in chapter 5 is classed as a sweet aroma. So these all point to Yeshua. This is the confirmation of the covenant. This is what God promised Abraham. And this is the covenant of promises that is getting ratified now. It's not broken yet. No one's broken it yet. Because there's not been a sin of the golden calf yet. There's no sin offerings yet. And there are no Levitical priests here yet. Who went up? The young men. The young men. Like you were saying to me, Joe, and I've read it myself, a lot of the sages say that this was the firstborn. Don't think they say this was the firstborn. And I would agree. I would agree. It's just that it's not the word firstborn. It's the word na'ar, in plural, na'arim. And there's a beautiful little thing you can look at on that. It's the first time na'ar appears. It's Moshe when he's a baby. Remember when he was a baby? He was a na'ar. And then there's another time, I haven't got all the references because I never looked at it. But the next time you see it, it's referring to young men, young men. Then it refers to a servant. And then finally it refers to men of war. And it takes you through the stages of Yeshua. He came as a baby. He appeared as a young man in the temple. He was a bond servant. And he is coming back as a man of war. You know what I mean? So you can just glean so much of the Yeshua is in all of this. Young men came. But I believe myself, Joan, that it's the firstborn because God says I had to swap the firstborn for Levitical priests. So it makes sense that these are the firstborn, but we can't say it definitively. But I would agree myself. So the young men of the children of Israel offered these Olah Korban, and Shalom Korban, peace offerings. And Moshe took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant. The book of the covenant. And read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, all that Yahovah has said, we will do. And we will shema, we'll be obedient. And Moshe took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, what we read at the start in Luke chapter 22, verse 20, where Yeshua said, this is the blood of the new covenant. Well, Moshe says something similar with this blood of animals, which we've just read in Hebrews, that God doesn't desire this. He says, this is the blood of the covenant, which Yahovah has made with you, according to all his words. Then Moshe went up, also Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and it was like the very heavens in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Israel, he did not lay his hand, or in the side reference of mine, he did not stretch out his hand. You can see this, can't you? They are far from him. These same people, they'll be making a golden calf within 40 days. Don't be giving me everything said we'll do. You've got to break the first thing. You've got to break the first thing within 40 days and make a golden calf and say of that golden calf, this is what brought us up out of Egypt. What? The first word is, I am Yahovah, your Elohim, who brought you up. How could you forget that? How could you swap the glory of Yahovah for the image of a golden calf and ascribe to that image that you have made with your man-made system, that is what brought you out of Egypt? Abomination, disgusting, broken covenant. But on the nobles of the children of Israel, he did not lay his hand. So they saw God and they ate and drank. Covenant meal. Covenant confirmed. Verse 12, then Yahovah said to Moshe, come up to me on the mountain and be there. And I'll give you tablets of stone and the Torah and commandments which I have written, that you may teach them. It's only got a few verses and we finish at verse 18, so we'll carry on. So Moshe arose with his assistant Joshua. Moshe arose with his assistant Yeshua. And Moshe went up to the mountain of God. And he said to the elders, wait here for us until we come back to you. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man has a difficulty, let him go to them, because they've got the book of the covenant now. They've heard all the words now. Any problems, go to them. Well, it's a bad idea, because they'll be going to him in a few weeks going, where's that Moses? Where's he gone? Oh, make us a God. That's what's going to happen. And God knows that's going to happen. But the language of that, you might not recognise it straight away, but if I just said, let's go to Genesis 22, you would start to remember that language now. All right, I was being dramatic. Moshe arose with his assistant Joshua. What happens in Genesis 22? Abraham arose early in the morning with his son Isaac. And they got to the foot of a mountain called Moriah. And Abraham said to them in Genesis 22, wait here for us and we will return. Moshe's saying the same thing here. It's Abrahamic, this. It's the promises made to Abraham that God was here. It's Abraham's the covenant he made with Abraham. God was here. He brought us out of Egypt because of the promises made to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. So it's only right that at this beautiful occasion of the confirmation of the covenants, that it should be very Abrahamic. And that Moshe should be saying, I'm going up now with my assistants, Yeshua. Isaac is a picture of Yeshua. And Joshua is a picture of Yeshua. And we're going up this mountain together. Use wait here, we will return. Then Moshe went up into the mountain. Verse 15, and a cloud covered the mountain. So those of us who are doing the Gospels on Sunday, you know where we're up to on Sunday. We're up to the Mount of Transfiguration on Sunday. How apt. I love it when we do the Torah and the Gospels and they all come together. Because on the Mount of Transfiguration, what happens? They go up a mountain as well. It just so happens in the Gospels, it says in Matthew and Mark, after 6 days. Well, look at this. Now the glory... Moshe went up into the mountain and a cloud covered the mountain. Now the glory of Yahuwah rested on Mount Sinai and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moshe out of the midst of the cloud. This is exactly what happens in the Mount of Transfiguration, isn't it? You go up to the mountain after 6 days, it says. So it's on the 7th day. You ascend the mountain and a cloud comes. And a voice speaks out the cloud and covers them all. The Mount of Transfiguration. Who's there? Moses. Moses is on the Mount of Transfiguration with Elijah, meeting with Yeshua. Who's here? Joshua's gone up the mountain. Moses has gone up the mountain. And the glory of the Lord comes. And Hebrews chapter 1 tells you quite clearly who the glory of the Lord is. The glory of the Lord is Yeshua. It says it. He is the exact likeness of his glory, the exact manifestation of his glory. So the glory of Yahuwah rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day, he called to Moshe out the midst of the clouds. The sight of the glory of Yahuwah was like a consuming fire. That's where we finished off last week in Hebrews 12, when God was saying, the writer of Hebrews was saying, you have come to Mount Zion, therefore don't you refuse his voice. For our God is a consuming fire. He still is. Let us have fear and trembling. Not in a negative way, in a glorious way. So the sight of the glory of Yahweh was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. Last verse. So Moshe went up into the midst of the cloud, just like Yeshua is going to do on the Mount of Transfiguration, and went up into the mountain, and Moshe was on this mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And that's exactly how Yeshua starts his ministry, isn't it? And exactly how Yeshua ends his ministry on the earth. He starts, he gets baptized, and he goes in to the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights and gets tempted by the devil. And he ends his ministry, doesn't he, with resurrection. And he has 40 days and nights when he appears on and off to his disciples before he ascends. And how does he ascend? In a cloud. And what did the angels say? He is going to come back in exactly the same fashion in the cloud. So it's like this, isn't it? We have not come to Sinai, we have come to Zion, but they are half similar. But our mountain's well better. Hallelujah. So amen. Hallelujah.